So,
In progress.
thank you for joining us, both those of y'all who are on with us live and those of you who are hopefully going to watch the recording. This is meant to be a low waste living workshop. So, we're going to talk about kind of mindset and skills on how to reduce waste in your at home life in your day to day. This is not meant to be a kind of prescriptive, go buy this product, you have to do this, you have to do that, but more of a how to think about and question the choices and changes you can make in your own home. So, I'm happy to talk about people's individual circumstances or what your own home looks like at the end of the presentation. But while I'm asking for you to participate throughout, I want to try and keep it at a place where everyone can participate. So if you've got like one specific thing that you want to switch out and you want to ask, like, what should I do for this one thing? Hold it till the end. I'm happy to talk about it. And throughout the presentation, try and use the skills we're going to build today to see if you can figure it out yourself, figure out some first steps for yourself. That being said, make sure that this, yep. Oh, too far? Okay. So, what are we going to talk about? First, I'm going to tell you who I am, why you can choose whether or not to listen to me on how to live a low waste lifestyle. Then we're going to talk about why low waste. Why does Carrie Ann keep saying low waste? What about zero waste? We're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you kind of my personal ideals, the things that ground me in my own personal practice of living low. We're going to talk about where does waste go? Where does it come from? Why is it important to think about where it goes? And then kind of the audit, one switch at a time and practice, that 5, 6, 7. That's the meat of today's workshop. Those are the actual tangible skills that we're going to build together to help you transition and question and make some small changes and however you want to do it to start living more low waste. At the end, we've got like advanced level low waste thinking. So intentional purchases is going to be kind of how do we think about what comes into the home and upcycle that shit. That's all about how do you take it one level further and give something one more extra life for it to live. My goal at the end of today is that you feel empowered and hopeful to go out and question and decide if this is something you want to do. Maybe you're already doing some of it and you didn't realize. If this is something you want to take to the next level. As a climate person, I'm all about climate hope. So I want you to feel at the end of this that this is really tangible and something that you can actually do. It is for you. This is not just for the super eco crazy people like myself who go all out and do everything they can. This is really meant to be accessible. Anyone can do it at home on their own to the level that makes sense for them. This first section, I'm going to be talking at you guys for a few minutes, and then we're going to get into the more kind of participatory parts of it. So hang out with me for a minute. Um, so I only know like 3 people that are here. So the rest of you, who am I? My name is Carrie Ann. I use they, them pronouns, and my household, which is myself, my partner, and our dog, who's on the screen, have been living low waste for the last 6 years. We've been living low waste in 3 different states. We've done it living on a farm rurally. We've done it in the suburbs, and we've done it living in a major city. We were just in Chicago until last year. So you can live low waste from anywhere, even when you don't have like the right store nearby or your waste company in the neighborhood isn't the best. There are still ways to do this. It is something that you can do without really like needing to have specific resources regional to you. In addition to living and doing low waste in a bunch of places, we've done it at a number of different budgets. So something I'm really adamant about is like, is low waste cheaper or more expensive to do? My research and living has taught me that it's usually about the same price as what you're normally getting. So instead of buying paper towels every single week, I might spend a little bit more upfront and buy like a reusable napkin that's going to last me for 3 times as long as if I had bought paper towels with that same amount. So low waste living is usually at or below the same price for the things that you would normally be buying. Very rarely is it a little bit more expensive, and usually that expense is like an upfront expense. So we've been living low at a number of different budgets. It is not something that is only for like folks who can afford, buying the extra, more expensive version of something. It is meant, again, I'm focusing today on the most accessible stuff. So we're going to talk about the stuff that is hopefully somewhere something is within budget for you. Aside from being a low waste person and having lived this way, I am a graduate student. I finished my graduate degree in 2 weeks. I'll be graduating with a master's in science and resource management. What is resource management? I think I describe this every day sometimes. It's basically how things are managed, how our resources like water, electricity, food, and waste are all managed. So, what I really am by getting this master's degree is a systems nerd. I'm really into how things flow in and how things flow out. And when we think about low waste living, we are thinking about how the things we purchase flow into our home and the waste from those things flows out of our home. And how can we divert how much comes in and where it goes out to? So, all about kind of thinking about those ins and outflows. That's what I've studied. That's what I'm a now expert on, having gotten this degree, which is super cool. And the reason this is also important to me is because making these small changes in my day-to-day life have made me build stronger values about what's important to me in my home. And changing my values to say, focus on things that will last longer, that have multiple uses, is changing my home's culture. And culture is a really cool thing. When we think about ways to change our culture and to build community and culture with one another, those are how we make greater change within the community as a whole. So, kind of tying a thread here, but in my mind, living low waste and making small changes at your home is a great way to help sprout some little seeds of hope and create some value changes and some focus in on what's important to you and your community and how to be open to creating change in the larger sense. So just making small changes at home can change the world. Okay. Now, why low waste? Who here has heard of zero waste before? And like, you can give me like a chat hand or like a Zoom raise. We've got some hands in the room here. Yeah, we've all kind of heard of zero waste. Everyone knows zero waste. Um, why am I calling it low waste then? Well, I've got great news for you that you might already know. Everything produces waste. Everything from plants and people to animals, everything produces waste. So if we're going to talk about zero waste, technically we wouldn't be allowed to produce any waste at all. And there are people out there who can live lifestyles where everything gets reused. The astronauts do it. People like to do it in off-grid situations. But we at home in our urban or suburban settings, we don't have to go for 100% perfection. We can be quite satisfied with just a low waste lifestyle. So it's literally really, really hard to get 100% low waste, zero waste. We're going to focus on, throughout this presentation, we're going to focus on what we can do. We're going to focus on what's accessible to us, what we're interested in, what's exciting to make changes. And really, I want to I'm going to keep saying it, guys, but trying to do it 100%, trying to do it perfectly will get in your way of doing it at all. And I personally think that's true in most things in life. If you are always like, it needs to be 100% or nothing, you're just not going to get that far into it. So with low waste living, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do the things that we want and not do the things that aren't accessible, that don't make us happy, that we don't want to do. If you only make one switch, that's still less waste. You do not need to switch out every single thing possible to start living a low waste lifestyle. Great. Okay. There we go. That brings me to kind of my personal ideas on living low waste. So, as I just mentioned, we're going to do it imperfectly. We're going to do it like however we need to do it. We're going to do it wrong sometimes. Totally cool. I'm into making mistakes. I think it's how we learn. That's the number one kind of moral of living low waste in my household. The second one is to do it one thing at a time. I have had many conversations with people who are like, I can't imagine getting rid of everything in my house and replacing it with a low waste version. And I'm like, that's a crazy thought to do. That much change at once is a a really big, overwhelming kind of concept. I don't think that's how, it's accessible to go low waste. And I'm not sure that I would consider doing that even today, with most of our home being low waste. I don't think I would consider even now replacing all of our things at once. Doing it one at a time feeds into building that momentum. And it also teaches you as you go. You learn what you like, you learn what you don't like, you pick up on what your habits using certain types of switches might be. If you switch one product out and you learn that you hate that product, you might, be stuck with it for a while. And if you had switched out everything for that one product, now you're going to feel resentful because you already made this huge switch. You already committed all of this energy and resources to switching out all these things at once. But if you do it one at a time, you can say, hey, this one's not for me. I'm going to go back to my more wasteful version. This is too much work. I don't like it. That one thing is going to be wasteful. And then I'm going to move to the next one and I'm going to do one other thing at a time. And going one at a time lets you make that decision without, again, that kind of like all or nothing mindset. And three, little Marie Kondo moment, do what brings you joy. Do it because it makes you happy, because it means you take the trash out less frequently, because it's easier to clean up or easier to manage. Don't do it because you feel guilty. You're not gonna want to do it if it's coming from a place of climate guilt or if it's coming from a place of like, you feel obligated to do it. Choose the switches, choose the options for your low waste life that makes sense for you in your home. And if it doesn't bring you joy, let it go. It's totally fine. I'm not going to be mad at you for it. You don't have to be mad at you for it. That's it. That's all there is to it. So these are three things I keep in mind as I go through the process we're going to learn today. Maybe they work for you, maybe they don't. Maybe you've got ones that you would personally add to this if you're already living low a little bit. But for me, this has grounded our household in how to make these decisions and how to do it in a way that brings us joy rather than just doing it because we feel bad about all the waste. So I'm gonna grab some water. Where does the waste go? We all produce waste right now at home, right? Can anybody, tell me, do you have like recycling? Do you have a landfill? Does anybody compost? Where do you currently kind of like throw things away to? There's a hand in the room. Amit?
We compost at home and recycle with our town's recycling system, and then take the trash to a transfer station.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So this person in the room, they have a compost at home, they recycle with the town, and they take a trash, and I'm guessing that's a landfill bag to a transfer station in their town. Cool. So you've got like the whole spectrum. Anyone else want to share what they have at home? Compost, recycling. Maybe you just have a trash bag. That's like totally cool if all you have at home is a trash. And we got a chat. Haya says, our government has trash cans outside everyone's house, so we basically use it. Great. So you guys have a trash. Cool. Okay. So not everyone has the same kind of like waste system within their community. There's like a whole way of navigating where does your waste come from and go. Again, I'm going to talk today at a really high level, a very generalized level. I'm going to make a lot of generalized statements. I have a Substack and I'm eventually going to write a blog about how to do research and understand your own specific community and their waste management. But from here forward, you're going to hear a bunch of very like generalized statements. And I'm going to ask you to bear with me on that front. So, basically, there's kind of three main categories of where our waste can go. One is the landfill in the middle of this picture here. Most things go in the landfill. Pretty much everybody has a trash, or if they don't have a trash, they put their trash in someone else's trash, which is also a common thing. Landfill means that everything that winds up in that bucket goes to a dedicated land space where they are literally going to pile it up on top of itself until all of those materials naturally decompose. And the things going in the landfill, they don't decompose in like 5 to 7 years. Sometimes it's like 50 to 70 years or 250 years. So most of the things that are going in our landfill are always going to be going uh, to that kind of big, you guys have seen photos, big plot of land, hills of trash. They're going to sit there until they decompose. Then we have the recycling on the left. Recycling is supposed to go to a waste management site where it is sorted and then made into a new material. Certain types of recycling are more efficient than other types of recycling. I'll touch on that a tiny bit. But the idea with recycling is that it's not going to go sit in a pit somewhere. It's actually going to be turned into the next thing and given another life. So when we put stuff in recycling instead of in the landfill, it has an opportunity to be reused rather than going to sit and be made into waste. And then on the right, we have the compost, which David also put in the chat that he puts out apple cores and small pieces of fruit for birds and squirrels. We compost the rest of our veggies and fruit. What's so great about composting is that it takes the material, thank you for sharing that, David. It takes the material that we would normally put in the landfill, but that decomposes really quickly and puts that organic material, organic meaning like fruits and veggies, plants, things that are kind of plant matter, basically, those all decompose very quickly compared to like the stuff we're throwing in the landfill, the kind of plastics and containers and whatnot, those don't decompose quickly. So if we put our compost items, like the ones David mentioned, into our compost, those are going to have their own opportunity separate from the landfill to decompose, to break down naturally, and you get really nice soil most of the time afterwards. Sometimes compost can be done in your backyard. Many places you cannot do compost in your backyard, especially in urban settings, because there's lots of critters who would love to eat it. And so nowadays in the US, it's very common to have, what's the word? They will come and take your compost for you, and they put them in big ovens with biomaterial, with biology, and they make it, there's a word for it. It's like machine-made compost. It's very cool. My point being, most of the time, we are used to putting everything in the landfill. When we divert to the recycling and to the compost, we give an opportunity to those materials. Well, thank you, David. Yes, industrial compost and bioreactor are both the correct words that I was looking for. Thank you, guys. Those are both versions of what I was after. So when we put things in recycling and compost, we are diverting them from going to the landfill. Today, when I'm talking about living low waste, I am talking about reducing how much goes in the landfill. So I'm going to talk about putting things in recycling or choosing to compost instead of landfill. Other people with their own thoughts and feelings might tell you that you need to reduce however much you're putting in recycling and compost as well, and consider all of these things waste. I'm not here for perfection. I'm here for making this accessible and doing what feels good. And for me, diverting as much as I personally can from going into that middle landfill box is my priority. Okay, so I do want to touch on some like myths because people have really big feelings in the environmental world about recycling, and I think some of it's kind of valid. So I've got some myths on the screen. I also just realized I have no way to see the time, but I think we're okay. Thank you. Okay, so myth one, if there's something wrong in the recycling, the whole thing goes in the trash, or maybe you've been at an office and you saw like the janitor put the recycling bin bag and the trash bag bin in the same bag and then tie those up and throw that away. Most waste management places are going to sort those things out, so you should still recycle them. I have had this conversation with so many people. They're like, I don't recycle because I one time saw a janitor put the two bags together. I'm like, well, I hate to tell you this, but there are people and robots whose jobs are to sort out your recycling. So it's still worth it. there is such thing as wishful recycling, but I'm of the mindset it is better to try and have it get to the recycling plant and be denied than to not try at all. So, and then the other piece on the right, the myth is that all our recycling, I'm talking about the US in this specific myth, gets shipped out to Asia and other countries and isn't really being recycled at all. This is like half true. So the US does ship out a lot of our recycling. It's still very much worthwhile to recycle. The reason it's being shipped out is because we do not have a recycling industrial complex in the US to do those things regionally. In the last 5 years, a number of countries have begun denying and setting grounds for refusal of accepting recycled material from the US. And there's been an increase in recycling plants here in the US being developed in response to that. So the US does ship out recycling. It is definitely an environmental justice issue. We were doing it because we didn't have the jobs and capacity to do it here. And less is being shipped out on a regular basis. So it's improving. This should not get in the way of you choosing to recycle. You should still recycle. It's still worth it to put the plastic in the recycling bin instead of the landfill. Even with the complicated ethics of that happening. Almost done with the talking bit, guys. I promise. Okay. So we talked about we're going to try and reduce as much stuff as going to go into the landfill. So how are we going to do that? We're going to use the 3 R's. Some environmentalists use 5 R's. Some of them use 8 R's. Today, we're keeping it simple. We're keeping it low key. We're going to use just the 3. To reduce, to reuse, and to recycle. I hope the Zoom isn't like doing the black box thing. You guys can see the whole, whatever. Okay, so these are our kind of, remember I talked about inflows and outflows in our house? Instead of throwing everything out in our outflow into the landfill, we're going to use these 3 R's to think about how else could we get these things out of our house? How could we divert them from the landfill into something else? So to reduce means we're going to try and find a way to switch this single-use product out so it no longer needs to be brought into the house. We're going to look for options that are multi-use. We're going to look for options that might be recyclable instead of an option that goes in the landfill regularly. We're going to reduce it coming in the first place in some way or another. The reuse section, we're going to find a second life for this item. So we're going to think about, we used it once for its original function. What other function could it possibly have that I could use it for? Could I give it multiple lives before it goes into the landfill? In a certain sense, it's still going to go in the landfill, and I know this. But I also know, as a systems scientist, that delaying the period before it gets into the landfill by giving it more uses, more life cycles, is also a part of the solution and is very much worthwhile to do. And then recycle, hopefully you've heard of recycling. We just talked a bit about it. Recycling, we're just going to send these items to be made into new great items. And in the bottom left-hand corner, we have our compost bin, which if we take all of the items that are compostable out of the landfill and we are able to compost them, that will significantly decrease what's in our trash bin in the first place as well. So as we go into the next portion of the slides, which is about kind of the actual skills to do the low waste living and to approach your home, these are the 3 methods that we're going to think about. Once we know what our waste is, we're going to use these 3 methods to think about how can I reduce this waste, one thing at a time in your home. You guys ready? Okay. Going low waste. It all starts with an audit. If you want to go low waste, you have to know what your waste is. So the first thing I want you to do, I want you to think about what room in your house are you in that you throw the most stuff out? Where are you when you throw things out? And put it in the chat. Come off mute if you so desire. Where is your trash can located in your house? Where do you throw stuff away from? The kitchen? Someone in the room said the kitchen. all y'all on Zoom or at home, you can go and look right now where your trash can is. Study, kitchen. Oh, probably kitchen. Ours is also in the kitchen. I think the kitchen is probably like the hot spot in houses for where waste is produced. My family also just loves to hang out in the kitchen. So, okay, we've got lots of kitchens in the chat. Good, great. Thank you for participating. Keep those juices flowing. Um, okay, the kitchen. We're gonna hang there for the moment. I want you to close your eyes and look in your trash bin. What is sitting in your trash right now? Again, you guys are at home on Zoom. Go look in your trash right now and tell me what's on the top of your trash bin. Maybe you're like you make lunch for work and throwing away the snack bag and that's sitting in there. Maybe you got home, you had a little yogurt. Okay, we've got some eggshells sitting at the top of our waste bin. What's sitting on the top of your trash right now?
Just through waste and clean wrap,
Oh,
plastic wrap.
okay. We've got cling wrap or plastic wrap in the room. Some ripped foil. David says almost nothing. Well, David, I think you might be a pro if you're at almost nothing. Vincent says papers and plastics. Okay. Okay. So that's a pretty good variety. A number of these things are food related, which makes sense because we said that the kitchen was our hotspot. Um, The goal of the audit is for you to think about critically the things that you're producing the most waste from. So things like cling wrap or paper towels are almost always going to be, and like aluminum foil and stuff, those are almost always going to be like the things that fill up most of your trash bin. When we were like 4 years into living low waste, I remember I went in Chicago to our trash and I looked at it, and the only thing in there was paper towels. Everything else in the trash, there was nothing else. It was just the whole bag was full of paper towels. And I think I must have just like cleaned the whole house or something, the way that they were piled up in there. But I was like, wow, I'm using a lot of paper towels. So your trash bin and that process of thinking about what's in there, where did it come from? What room was it used in? Those are your first couple pieces of information that are going to help you understand what is a worthwhile switch for your household. You're not going to switch out something for eggshells. Those you're going to have eggshells. I love eggs. There's definitely eggshells in my house. You can put your eggshells in a compost, or you can also, if you want to be like really pro, put them in the oven and then crush them up and put them in your plants as fertilizer. But there's going to be some stuff that you're going to have in the trash. This task, this kind of piece, the audit, is to help you figure out what are the ones that you're constantly getting rid of, that you're constantly throwing away, that's always in your trash bin. Let's focus on those. We're going to pull those out and we're going to use our skills to see if we can replace them. So we do our audit. And then we identify, Haya asked, how does it help with fertilization? I don't know exactly the science, but eggshells have calcium in them. And when you break them up and oven them, they become soakable to the soil in some way or another. I'm not that type of environmental nerd. I'm sorry. I just know it offhand. Um, okay. So you do an audit, you pick your room, you go through your trash, you're like, I keep throwing this thing away. How do I get this thing to not be in my trash anymore? Am I gonna reduce it? Am I gonna reuse it? What am I gonna do? So this is where you find a blog like the one that I've started or some other piece of the internet, and you search, I've got dish sponge, like sponges, plastic sponges. I keep throwing them away. Every week I'm throwing away a sponge that I paid $1 for. How do I not throw away sponges anymore? And you look for a SUSTI option. SUSTI means sustainable. I coined that word in 2017. Um, well, there's a number of SUSTI options for dish sponges. My partner always does the dishes, and he really, really loves that like middle bottom row. They're like bristle heads, and they're on a little wooden pole. The reason that these are more sustainable is that the wood can be composted and the bristles can be composted, and you can pull the metal out and you can recycle the metal. So when that brush is done with its end of life, it does not have to go in the landfill. But if you don't want to do the work of pulling it apart, you could put that brush in the landfill. That's okay. That brush is going to last a lot longer than your sponges. So you're going to use less plastic sponges by using one of these little, this is like, you don't need all of these dish brushes. You just choose the one that you like the best. Maybe you like the little short handles. Maybe you like the round one best. This is why we switch one thing at a time, because you don't need to go buy every single brush. You just buy one of them and then you're like, I don't like this brush. And then you use it until it's done and then you buy a different version of the brush because you only got one at a time. So, in every way, choosing that option instead of the little sponge is going to be diverting from the landfill. In the middle, we've got like chip bags, snap bags. These are really common. I think like families, like this is probably like one of the number one things families are producing is like snack bags and things. There's a lot of options. I personally really don't like the option on the bottom right, which is these eco wraps. They're like beeswax. We don't use them in my house. I don't like them. They don't bring me joy, but they might bring you joy, and you can try them if you want to. What we use instead is the silicone stashers that are on the bottom left. I really like them, but I also don't eat snacks all the time and I don't have little kids running around. So maybe you like the beeswax. Maybe you don't like either of these. Maybe you prefer just having your chips in the snack bag. Buy the chips in the snack bag and do something else. It's okay. It's okay. Okay, there's a question. Oh, okay. One of our attendees is also a pro because they've been to the beeswax wrap factory in Vermont here in the US. This was a webinar meant for newbies, okay? You guys are exceeding expectations. The bottom right-hand side is paper towels. Like I said, these are like the number one thing in our trash at home. Yes, we still buy paper towels. Okay, I know, crazy. But in addition to having regular paper towels, we have three other types of replacement switches that we also use for different things. And I think paper towels is a really good example for this because when there's a spill, I use this little Swedish dishcloth, which is the leftmost option with the pears on it, because it soaks up water really well. I also use that one when I'm wiping down the countertop. When I'm eating food and I need a napkin, I use a little cloth napkin. And when I'm like cooking and I'm wiping up something like a little food fell on the counter really quick, I'll use a tea cloth or like a dish towel. So I've replaced the function of a paper towel with three other pieces for three very distinct functions within the house. It's not always going to be a one-to-one replacement. Sometimes you're going to have to try and make errors and make switches and see what works for you in your house. Has anyone made a switch that they are really excited about and want to share with the group? Yeah, there's someone in the room.
I'm very glad that I am switching from plastic containers to glass containers.
Okay. Wengel is very glad that they are switching from plastic containers to glass containers, which I know I gave them several of, so I'm glad for them. I am going to share the presentation and there will be a recording of it as well. We'll share the slides and the recording. Anyone else got a switch that they're like really excited about that brought them a lot of joy? Look, I've got a plastic cup, but I also have a metal straw because my plastic cup, this is recyclable, but the plastic straw is not recyclable. So I just leave the plastic straw in the car. And then if I know I'm going to go out and get a beverage, I bring my little straw with me. This whole thing's recyclable. It's not going to the landfill. You just gotta think a little differently, and then you don't feel so bad. Yeah, another hand in the room.
First of all, plastic cooking utensils with metal or wood, which took some time, but as like the plastic ones started to kind of wear down. Bought like some metal ones and some wooden ones that have done better.
Yeah. So, someone in the room shared that they've switched out the plastic cooking utensils in their home for wood and metal. So wood and metal is, again, wood can be composted, metal can be recycled. So switching, I'm guessing like ladles and like kind of spatula situation,
Yeah.
big spoons, yeah. Switching out based on material is one way to do that diversion from the landfill. And then Haya in the chat said, I use plastic cups for plantation. That's great, Haya. That brings us to the reuse piece of it. The classic plastic bag changed by the cloth bag. Excellent example. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the participation. Okay, the third piece, this is the final piece of our little skill set here, is that doing these one switches at a time doesn't mean that your house changes overnight. You have to practice. Sorry to tell you, habits and change don't just come naturally to us as humans. And change is really hard and scary. So practice is highly recommended. Because you're doing one thing at a time, you get to focus on practicing with that one thing at a time. So I kind of have three pieces here in terms of what does practice mean? What should we consider while we practice? We're going to consider the function. What do you use the item for? Is it multi-use or single use? So that's like the paper towel example I was naming. The paper towel is a multi-use. It has a lot of different functions that it serves in my house. So I'm going to practice using one new solution at a time for one function at a time. So I'm just going to do the cloth napkins. I'm going to practice using them in place of paper towels when I eat. I'm just going to focus on practicing that. Placement, where do you use the item the most? So sticking with that example, the cloth napkins, we often eat our food kind of around the kitchen island. At my house, there's like a little bamboo tray stuffed with cloth napkins. You can pull them out right there and sit at the kitchen counter and eat your food. So I found a placement that was really close to where we're going to use it most of the time, which brings us to the third piece of practice, frequency. How often do you use the item? Well, I'll tell you this, I use those cloth napkins every day, sometimes like 2 a day. So at first, I only had 5 or 6 cloth napkins. That did not last very long because I was going through my napkins and I was like, oh, I have to do the laundry. So I have more cloth napkins. I'm going to need more cloth napkins. That's the frequency piece. So you can consider each of these if something isn't working for you. If you make a switch and you're like, wow, I really like this, but it just doesn't seem like it's meeting my needs. I like the idea of it, but it's not meeting my need. Consider these 3 pieces, function, placement, and frequency, and see if there's a way that you can make an adjustment in your practice. Maybe it needs to be in a different location. Maybe you need multiple of them around the house in several locations. These are kind of like that habit building piece of making a switch work. Artie in the chat said, I buy concentrate all-purpose cleaners, which I dilute and refill plastic spray bottles. Awesome. We also do that. I love Castile soap. Castile soap can clean anything, including like stains on your shirt or like literally anything. I highly recommend. And that's a great example of like the function is multi-purpose. The frequency could be anywhere in the house. So if you're using them in spray bottles, I would guess that you're going to use them to clean counters everywhere from like the bathroom and the kitchen to maybe just like at the foyer. Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you. Castile. Well, I'm trying to write it for you, Miriam, and I am on a computer I don't know. There you go. Okay, so we're going to audit to understand what our waste is. We're going to identify our switch one thing at a time, and then we're going to practice using our new items. That brings us to advanced level low waste living. This slide is about what to buy. If you are in the grocery store and you've got your favorite things that you always get, which I think we all have, kind of an advanced level of living low waste is asking yourself if you buy the best container version. So on the milk jug example, that carton is technically called a Tetra Pak, and fun fact, they're actually recyclable in a lot of places, even though they say they're not. But the milk jug is usually a plastic jug. For most people, we would assume the milk jug is more easily recycled than the carton is. And so, can you buy the better recycled container rather than the other option that you might normally be purchasing? Again, in the middle, a cardboard box for a snack versus a plastic bag. Plastic bag, a little harder to recycle than a cardboard box. Again, you technically can recycle the plastic bag. There's a number of different companies like TerraCycle that will bulk recycle them for you, or you can stuff plastic bags all up together and take them to a grocery store like a Home Depot and they have a plastic bag recycling. But could you just buy the cardboard box version and recycle the paper instead? Anybody, does anybody like already do this? Anybody in this high level where they're like, oh, I choose this option over that one? Or maybe is there something in your home that you know you love this like one brand of yogurt and it comes in a container and you're like, oh, this is the one container I can't recycle. We got any examples like that? Any container freaks out there who think about these containers? Yeah, I'm getting nods in the room.
I about what the food is like in packaging, like the plastic packaging or like boxes.
Hmm.
And the fruits are just like very available, or veggies are very available, just like the plastic packaging.
Prepackaged. Yep. So when Gal in the room was talking about being mindful if like fruits and veggies are pre-packed or not versus buying them outright, and like if something's in a box or paper container versus in a plastic one. Great example. Yeah. Haya, it sounds like you're a pro at upcycling and like reusing your waste products in other scenarios. So that's our next slide, but it seems like you're ahead of the curve on that one, which is great. Um, Yeah, I know when I was in college, there was like one type of container our mess hall would use that was not recyclable in our local waste management. It was like a four, and they didn't do number fours for recycling. And we like petitioned to get like a special dedicated recycling bin for this one container, because the mess hall refused to get rid of using it, and it was like the one thing we couldn't do. Um, so that's the thinking critically. You can kind of reduce what's coming into the house in the first place by thinking about what the container is that it's coming in. Okay. Our last segment, which Haya is a pro at, is to upcycle that shit. So if something is already at its end of life, it has been used to the point it can't be used no more. It, in fact, can be used for a different function. My favorite example, which I do a lot of in our household, is clothing. So shirts that get lots of little rips in them or like the seams come apart. If it's not really worth kind of fixing the shirt itself, which I'll usually do, they make great rags. They make really good rags for cleaning surfaces, for sopping up like paint or oils if I'm staining furniture, which I tend to be doing. They make good rags for that type of stuff. Also, socks, old socks are really good for like polishing furniture or polishing brass. It's like a weird little cleaning thing that I figured out. And jeans and pants, lots of people, their pants in the middle, the seat, like the between your thighs will get really thin, and it's really hard to fix pants when they go that way. But pant material is usually really thick, which means it makes really good patch material for things like sweaters and jackets and more sturdy things that you might wear as like an overlayer. So, and it's really cute, as Wingell just reminded me. So, you can turn your pants into patches and your shirts into rags and your socks into socks that you can use to polish things if you so desire. And as Haya has shared in the chat, you can use all types of containers for all different other types of things. My little cousin uses plastic bottles and plastic bags to make plastic bricks, and uses them in her garden at her apartment at school. Obviously, jars are a really common one. Just use a jar for anything that your heart desires. Jars are so functional. Jars are also one of the highest efficiency things to be recycled, so do not feel bad about recycling jars. Glass is like practically 1-to-1 in terms of loss when we recycle it. So if you have a whole cabinet of jars, recycle a couple. They'll be happy with that. Um, and also sometimes containers and those things just make cool materials. I'm an artist, and I think that the net bags that like clementines come in are like just really cool and fun material to like play with and put on paintings and things. So if you get creative, if you've got a garden space, if you've got, you know, you've got somewhere that could use a little creativity, then do what me and Haya do and do some upcycling. Upcycle that shit. Um, okay. Anyone have any upcycles they want to share? Any ideas for upcycling that you like to do in your household? This is advanced level here. To upcycle and to think about your containers is like pro low waste living. So if you're not there, that's totally cool. Start with your one low waste switch at home and then see where it takes you. Okay. If you have nothing else to share of your cool upcycling projects that you're going to email me afterwards and show me how cool they are, I'm going to be like, why don't you share that with the group? Yeah. Okay. Wait, we've got one in the room.
Version of old polyester clothing.
Mm.
Really want to like polyester clothing, and I also I don't want it to be a landfill. I also kind of don't want other people to wear polyester anymore. Like a new crusade, and so yeah, I'm gonna try to make this efficient stuff with the old clothes.
Wow. Okay. Very ambitious project here. Just going to reiterate for our friends on Zoom, Wengel is endeavoring to make a seat cushion out of polyester clothing. And it sounds like you're stuffing the clothing into the cushion, which is going to take a lot of clothes. Okay. They've got a good bag of them. Yes, a lot of clothes are made out of polyester. So the opportunity sizing on what could go inside of your seat is very high, which is good. Very good. Yeah, I'm happy to help with that. That's my type of project. Okay, so we've talked about what is low waste. We've talked about do it your way, do it one thing at a time. Don't worry about making mistakes. We've gone over how to go low waste, doing that audit, doing one switch at a time, taking one thing in, taking one thing out, playing with it, practicing with it, changing your mind about what you want. And we've also talked about some pretty advanced level low waste living things like upcycling and considering our containers when we make purchases at the store. At the end of the day, all of you guys are capable of doing this. It sounds like many of you are already doing many versions of this, which is phenomenal. And not everything has to be low waste. It is okay to produce trash because you individual people producing trash on the computer right here are not causing climate change by producing trash. Nobody in this room is producing the CO2 that makes climate change happen. That's like the 1%ers who fly their private jets around. Make the low waste choice for yourself because you want to do it, because it brings you joy. And know that when you do that, you're doing something that makes you happy, that you get to enjoy. Maybe someone else in your community will get to enjoy it with you. Okay. Haya says, guys, you can support my journey on my page greenthread_L, I think. I recently started and I hope you guys can help me out. Everyone go follow Haya. I'm excited. Yeah, that's my whole slides. I have no idea what time it is. Perfect. We've got a couple minutes. If anyone has questions, if anyone wants to talk about like a specific switch, you're like, I have this one thing, I hate it. How do I get it out of my house? I'm happy to talk about it. Despite this not being a prescriptive thing, I have lots of recommendations. So it is an open floor. I'm going to leave the recording on for the moment in case we do talk about anything super exciting. But the floor is in y'all's hand, or if you have general questions. Yeah.
I think it's wonderful to think about like, when we're slowing down our use of plastic, we're also becoming healthier ourselves because it's a new study, or it's a new field of study, but microplastics have just, such horrible effects on our health and the planet that we are barely, starting to understand. So this has a lot to benefit us in that way.
Yeah, Wengel made the very astute point that when we choose to go low waste for ourselves, we are most often cutting plastic out of our lives, and we are becoming more and more conscious that plastic and microplastics have negative impacts on our health and well-being. So when you choose to go low waste and cut out plastic, you're also doing your body and your physical form a favor. Very well said. Yes, there's a question.
People, like I know you said that like find what's in your house, find what you're wasting is like a more general rule, but like do you think generally there is a good place to start that people can do? Or like is there something you think like if everybody started with this one thing, we have a pretty good impact altogether?
Yeah.
Is there something you would recommend?
Yeah, so the question is there one place that you think people could really start, or should start, or one thing that if everybody kind of made the change to, it would have a really big impact or really help people get underway? Um, I do think the kitchen is like a really, really good place to start. And I really think that the switch to start composting, even if you do not garden, even if you do not need soil, is like huge to reducing how much stuff is going in your landfill. Because food and like the plant material is so easily decomposable. If you're putting that into the same bin as your landfill, it's a big percentage of your landfill, most likely. And it's kind of like a really easy way to just not be filling up the trash all the time. You don't have to buy anything new. You don't have to, make a big commitment in a certain sense, hopefully. And in most settings, in most places, everywhere I think except major cities, it's usually possible. There's community gardens and community places that will take compost, if you can't do it in your own backyard. But again, composting is so accessible because you can do it in your own backyard. Um, David shared Haya's Instagram. Everyone go follow Haya, and we can include that in our post-event send out. I also have a Substack where I'm blogging about like this process of going low waste and making specific recommendations for switches. So we'll include that link as well if you're interested in like following along and getting some more insight on like, I hate this one thing in my kitchen. What should I replace it with? That's kind of more geared towards what my blog will cover. Well, also eventually I'll talk about EVs and things like that. Some other pretty cool, should I do it? Should I not do it questions in terms of going eco-friendly. Oh, I missed that one. Oh, yes, electric tools and machines can go under repair or maintenance. They can. And if you live in the US, Best Buy will recycle most electric devices. And if you don't have a Best Buy nearby, or you're not in the US, most of the time you can take them apart for pieces and use them to fix other stuff, or take them apart just for the precious metals inside. Anything that's a machine has like gold and precious metals in it, which is crazy. Um, do it safely though. Don't do that if you're like, if you haven't done it before. Do it with a friend. Okay. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you for taking the time. It was really nice getting to chat with you all. I hope something was new or invigorating if it wasn't new for you today. If you have any other questions, we're here, but I'm gonna stop our recording. And yeah, thank you all. Oh, I stopped the screen share. Thank you all for joining. There we go. Stop recording.